Welcome to Sold Out, the weekly podcast where we travel through time to try to see the biggest movies on the big screen, only to find out that they are in fact sold out. So we see something else instead. I'm Ian. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Smith.
Hi, Ian. I am Michael Smith. I am a former media and film student, longtime film critic. I used to write my movie reviews. Some of my former outlets were MoviePass and the Fan-Sided Network. And now I am the co-host of the best movie review podcast on the internet, Sold Out. We have episodes dropping Monday evenings at 9 p.m. for audio. Wednesday mornings, we have the full episodes on our YouTube. And you're Ian.
I am Ian. I am a longtime movie lover and media critic, and I am also host now of Sold Out. Are we a movie review podcast? I thought of us as like a movie club.
We are
movie get together.
A movie club. We definitely share our opinions on movies. There is a review aspect of it, but I think, as everyone will notice, the conversations are not entirely critical.
Michael, I share my opinions on everything.
That's
Do you
fair.
want to know about how I feel about breakfast cereal? I've got opinions.
Do you?
Do you want to know how I feel about like city layout and planning? Got opinions.
Oh, I really actually want to hear your, urban planning thoughts.
Maybe we'll do an urban planning podcast in the future. All the zoning here on... Damn, I couldn't improv a title for it in time.
Probably for the best.
Well, this is our third week in May of 2016. We have watched a couple movies that were completely overshadowed by the giant that was the Marvel Universe and Captain America Civil War. We watched in horror as a dog ripped out Elia Shawkat's throat. We cooed as we saw a kitten melt the heart of Luis Guzman's drug kingpin. And it's finally time to do what we came here to do. And we're going to see an ant and a spider irritate a falcon while a panther plots his revenge. We saw the 86th highest grossing movie of the last 50 years, Captain America Civil War.
Yeah, and I think, it's impossible to talk about any of these movies in total isolation, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe is an entity that in some ways kind of swallows up every individual chapter. Civil War is no exception. It may even be the movie that sort of established that rule.
Don't bury the lead, Michael. Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, so to watch this movie, I did a little bit of homework. I rewatched Captain America, The Winter Soldier. I rewatched the Avengers, Age of Ultron. Those two from a just plot standpoint, I think feed pretty directly into this, provide context that, in my opinion, is necessary to fully appreciate Civil War.
All right.
And I think it definitely colored my viewing of this movie.
Well, I specifically did not watch those movies because I really wanted to see, does this movie hold up on its own? Because while you're correct, they are designed to sort of be this big universe that incorporates everything. I really am always interested. Does a movie work just as a movie? I think when we did Indiana Jones, we did a really good job of saying like, hey, here are the connections it has. But does this movie stand up on its own 2 feet? And obviously the indie universe, the Fedoraverse is not as giant and all-consuming as the Marvelverse. But some Marvel movies I genuinely enjoy on their own, and I want to see if this one did as well. So let's do this.
Let's do it.
Pal, your buddy, Bucky.
They say there's a correlation between generosity and guilt.
If I misplaced a couple of 30 megaton nukes, you can bet there'd be consequences.
I am not my father.
Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth.
Żałuj.
Stop.
Zinadziet.
It's so hard for me to believe that she's someone's aunt.
It's an honor. I'm shaking your hand too long.
I'm gonna regret this.
This isn't gonna change what happened.
I don't care. He killed my mom.
I'll be there.
How you feeling?
I am feeling pretty good.
All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we will hear your synopsis of the movie. And I'm issuing the challenge now. Can you synop the movie without referencing any of the other movies?
Nope.
Well, you get bonus points if you do it. We'll be back with more Sold Out. A promotional message from Uplift Media. Welcome back to Sold Out. Michael is going to break down Captain America Civil War for us, and maybe is going to try to do it without referencing other movies. Maybe not.
We'll see.
I'll count how many times he does it.
All right. So in the aftermath of the events of Age of Ultron, there's one. The Avengers find themselves the subject of intense international scrutiny regarding the extensive collateral damage left in the wake of many of their missions. The United Nations has proposed the Sokovia Accords, a set of legal agreements designed to regulate the activities of enhanced individuals. The Avengers split into two factions. The first, led by Tony Stark, welcomes the regulation. They acknowledge that despite their good intent, their actions have caused substantial damage and civilian casualties. Captain America's opposing cohort, however, believe the Accords would compromise the Avengers' ability to respond to threats quickly and make real-time decisions in the field, distrusting the UN's bureaucracy and their motives and efficacy. After a bombing at the signing ceremony for the Accords, the conflict escalates and the former allies find themselves at war.
You brought up Captain America's fear that it was going to slow them down,
yes,
and they wouldn't be able to make decisions in the field. Are you Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
I have some mixed feelings. I can see both sides of the argument, but I'm Team Cap.
You're Team Cap?
I'm Team Cap.
I will tell you that until this watching, I've always been Team Cap, and I don't know that I am anymore, based almost exclusively on what you just said, because Team Cap doesn't want to slow down. He wants to be able to make quick decisions in the field. All he does is make wrong decision after wrong decision after wrong decision during the course of this movie.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because that is a very real world argument about like presidential power and how far you can go in making those real-time decisions before you have to bring in the bureaucracy, and in that case, Congress, to really establish what it is you're doing. And we see in real life, there's this like practical concern about being able to have an element of surprise, be able to react to things that are happening without the slowing down of a bureaucracy. And I also think that when you introduce the political process to these types of things, then you have all kinds of considerations that are not necessarily just mission focused.
And I mean, I guess I don't know that the bureaucracy is the answer in this case, but I will tell you Captain America definitely needed a Batman in this movie.
This movie doesn't really have a supervillain. I mean, there is Zemo who is a villain. He's there kind of to move a few things forward, to make a few things happen so that there's something to react to.
So Captain America decides that he needs to go save Bucky because he's his friend. Fine, that's the personal decision that he makes, right? But the decision that he makes sort of as a superhero, as a representative of the United States, as this sort of guy on the lam, is to chase down, he doesn't even know Zemo, to chase down whoever it is that has executed some of these terrorist plots and that is supposedly on this crash course with this old Hydra mission to bring these super agents to bear on the world so that they can destroy
soldiers.
Winter soldiers to to destroy governments and have enormous power. And like a Labrador, he just chases after that problem without pausing for even a moment to discover or think about what is the motivation behind doing all of this, who's doing it, why are they doing it. He's just chasing it from moment to moment to moment. And the conclusion of the movie, he arrives at that empty nuclear silo, and what's there but a bunch of dead Winter soldiers and a trap that's been laid by Zemo for him to battle Iron Man. He's just wrong every decision he makes in the field.
Yeah, and the truth is, like, there is this practical reality that the Avengers is this like extra governmental super army, right? And you definitely don't want those floating around.
Feels like a bad plan, but
and I get it, but then you're also then hit with this other practical reality, which is, okay, we have the Sokovia Accords, we have an agreement, and we can get into the nuances of the policy making there if we want to.
I think we're describing that bad movie again, aren't we?
Yeah. But then you run into the other practical reality, which is enforcement, right? When you have these enhanced individuals, these superheroes, like, okay, they violate the Accords, like,
what do you do?
What do you do about it? And you end up imprisoning them without due process.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought up due process. I have due process in my notes like 18 times because it doesn't seem to exist in the world even as it is now. And this is actually a really great way, like, segue into thematic connection to the original Civil War comic.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear some of your thoughts on those connections, because I have not read the comic. You have.
I have. And this is like a little bit about me. I'm not a comic reader. I grew up a big Spider-Man fan, loved the Spider-Man cartoons,
Spider-Man's my favorite superhero.
Spider-Man's great. I think he's everybody's favorite. It's why he's, such a valuable IP, and we can get into the business of how Marvel got him. And I was commuting somewhere and listening to NPR, and they'd brought up the Civil War comic that had happened in the Marvel Universe, like some report on it and how it was this really fascinating take on a post 9/11 America. And so I downloaded it on my iPad and I read through the entire Civil War series. And then I started reading some of the offshoots into Iron Man's universe, into Captain America's universe. And it is a dark and interesting tale about this trade-off between freedom and security, and what does the world look like? And I do not want to make this podcast about here's all the ways that the movie are different than the comic and why weren't they more loyal to it. I don't think that's an interesting conversation, but the themes of the comic are about that trade-off, and it's less about being able to make decisions in the moment, and it really is more about the personal freedom that. So Captain America is a superhero, right? And there's this really great line in the movie where the Secretary of State asks them, basically, what do you think would happen if I lost 2 30-ton megaton nukes? Like, there'd be hell to pay. He's referring to, yes, they're super beings, but they're human beings as megaton nukes, as weapons. He doesn't see them as individuals. He sees them as weapons.
Oh, interesting. So when were the comics published?
2006.
2006. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's important.
It's very important. Yeah. So this is in the wake of, suddenly we have the whole change in the TSA, and we're at war in the Middle East, and we have the Homeland Security, and all of these things that are changing in the American landscape, where we are suddenly trading away a lot of our individual freedoms to feel safer. And this comic is exploring it in some really, really interesting ways. And you have these sort of like technocrat individuals in Tony Stark.
I'm glad you mentioned like technocrats and Tony Stark falling in there. I think too about like America, right, is this experiment, this going on 250-year experiment in self-governance. And so, of course, Captain...
And it's going great.
Yeah. Had some hiccups. But of course, Captain America is going to be resistant to that idea of top-down control. Of course, his default is going to be this idea of being able to self-regulate.
That's interesting. Why do you think that's an of course? Because he's a military figure, and he's existed within a hierarchical military structure for his entire life.
Yeah, he has, but as a symbol of America, you're going to, I think, default to this idea of, yes, we have to have a government, but that government should exist as a frame around the idea that the individual is capable of making decisions for itself. And the Sokovia Accords at their core are actually it's not a document that is about regulating these extra governmental bodies. It's about regulating individuals. Like you said, it's seeing these enhanced people, these people with superpowers, not as people, as weapons, and then it starts treating them that way while in a lot of ways forsaking their humanity.
this is where like this movie could be like really interesting when you really start to pick it apart is, Black Widow. She does not have any.
Black Widow, Hawkeye, a lot of them don't actually have superpowers.
And so this law is being written to regulate them, which means it's being written to regulate everyone.
Right.
And that's where this movie and the plot of this movie is really, really interesting. And like I said, I want to explore the thematic connections between the comic and this movie. I think this movie does a really good job with the themes. I think where the movie falls a little bit short, and it's less the movie's fault and more just like the nature of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is that the reason for the Civil War comic to exist, for this story to come out, and why the authors of it wanted to put it out there and inspired was this changing landscape. In 2016, so that's a real world reason, right?
Right, you have the Sokovia Accords in the comic, I presume, based on what you've said so far, is this sort of analog to like the Patriot Act.
Well, there are no Sokovia Accords in the comic. That doesn't exist. In fact, it's not a worldwide problem. It's a United States problem. It's limited to the borders of the United States.
In the movie, it very much is a global issue.
It's only a global issue.
It's how do you deal with organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D., for example, and the Avengers that are working worldwide. They're crossing borders. How do you respect the sovereignty of other nations?
The inciting event of the comic is that there is a bunch of, we'll say, low-level superheroes who are producing a reality TV show where they run around and fight villains together. And they find a house that has some like real supervillains. And they are real supervillains that have really scary powers. And one of them, I think it's Nitro. I'm not a comic book guy.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, you want to mess with us? And he has the ability to explode like an entire city block. And he blows up, and there's an elementary school there, and a bunch of kids die.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we're now mixing kind of DC and Marvel, but you end up asking this like, well, who watches The Watchmen kind of question?
Oh, yeah.
And I think what gets asked in this movie, at least, and it's the question that I find really interesting, is like, okay, you're asking who watches The Watchmen, but who's watching the Watchers, right? Because the UN is also comprised of individuals and these nations that have their own priorities and motivations.
Well, and that's Captain America's biggest concern.
And his thing is like, okay, like if we're going through them, what happens when their motivations get in the way? What happens if the bureaucracy decides that some sort of economic interest is more important than, stopping the supervillain? You have the same problem just transposed onto a different body.
Well, it's not, I don't think it is the same problem. I think it's a different problem. So like I said, like Captain America is chasing this problem like a Labrador, right?
And his motivations are wrong too, because his motivations end up being very personal.
His motivations are relatively personal, but he still believes that he's stopping evil. Mm-hmm. And I think he would do it. I mean, the funny thing about all of it is like Bucky is put in there to emotionally compromise Captain America, yes. You think. But actually he's put in there to emotionally compromise Iron Man.
How so?
He's the one who killed his parents. He's there.
We find that out much, much later.
But that is the most important battle in the entire film, is that one at the end. The one between the big group is not, they can get over that battle. Mm-hmm. The battle at the end is the one that like really rips the Avengers in twain. And Bucky is there to do that. Every other step of the way, Captain America, if he had found out that there was a bombing and that there seemed to be some kind of plot to go release all these Winter Soldiers, he would have been pursuing Zemo to stop him from releasing that weapon on the world, regardless. But he fundamentally misunderstands the villain. He doesn't know who he is, and he does not know what his motivations are. He's just chasing action.
I think there's something that happens too, though, that makes sort of Iron Man's position a little less principled, in that Tony ends up doing what Captain America does too.
He 100% does.
Right? Like, so he's in favor of these accords. He's in favor of this limitation until he needs to act without approval. And then he does. And
he makes the wrong decision too.
And why does he make that choice, right? It's because he sees the urgency, right? And yeah, his judgment call ends up being not a little. His judgment call ends up being incorrect also because he has this like personal motivation.
No, but
he acts too, right?
Even like without the personal motivation, right? So when he visits Falcon on the Raft prison, and he reveals to him where he is, and he looks into it and he sees that Zemo has, killed these individuals. He can see the trajectory that he's on. he doesn't pause. And this is, again, not for the emotional reason yet. He doesn't pause to investigate what are the motivations going on behind here. Now, you mentioned you want to mix DC. I said they need a Batman. What I mean is they need a detective. They need somebody who is actually interested in the motivations of the villain to understand what he's trying to do, what he's trying to accomplish, and why he's trying to accomplish it. But they're not doing any of that. And the moment that Tony decides that is the moment that he falls into the exact same trap that Captain's been in the entire film. And for us, it feels like a moment of, oh, they're coming together. But now they've both made the wrong decision together.
It feels like a moment of them coming together, but I also think like when you're having this philosophical debate between the two, you see it as one of them more quickly compromising their principle, right?
And that's what makes
Tony actually, like, if you're going to be like, oh, are we Team Cap? Are we Team Iron Man? Well, Team Iron Man has just shown us that they don't actually believe what they're preaching.
I 100%. It seems like this big popcorn movie on the outside. And this is why I like that they chose the Civil War storyline as the driver behind this film, because it is a story that seems very superhero-y, but to your point, there really isn't a supervillain. There's Zemo, who is just manipulating their motivations while they fail to investigate his motivations, which creates this just really incredible drive throughout the movie where it's like you want to take a side between Iron Man and Cap, which is weird because normally you take the good guy's side, but you don't really have a good guy in this movie. And the bad guy that you have is just manipulating the emotions of the good guys to turn them into bad guys. And it creates a really, really layered movie that is a ton of fun on the outside. And I think that it's worth getting into that. But also, like, I don't know, like it really is a much more nuanced, fascinating take on like, what is a superhero? How do they exist in the world? And I feel like the movie is a really great... Apology is the wrong word, but
it's an indictment on the Avengers movies that came.
It's an indictment
before it.
It is. It is to the Avengers movies that came before it. That The Last Jedi is to the Star Wars movies that came before it, where it takes a look at them and gets a little bit meta and kind of deconstructs them and says, "Is what they're doing right? Are we okay with this? And if so, why are we okay with it? Why do we trust their judgment so much? Like, should we trust S.H.I.E.L.D.'s judgment? Should we trust their judgment?" It's choosing a lesser of two evils in some ways.
I like it. I think it's a better movie in a lot of ways because it comes after those things. We're having to address things that, you know, the Avengers movies were very successful leading into this. The original Avengers movie, I think, was for a minute there like the highest grossing domestic box office movie.
But I do think one of the things that this movie, it's not even this movie. This is where it's like, I don't want to indict the entire Marvel Universe, but the Marvel Universe keeps setting itself up to kind of fail, even though I like this movie a lot and I think it works really, really well. But at the end of this movie, literally every character has a black eye.
Yeah.
And like that, the metaphor is not lost on me. Oh, no. The Avengers have a black eye. But at the end of the comic, like Captain America dies. He is dead. Goliath is dead. And because this movie has to feed into all of these other movies, they can't raise the stakes high enough that, like, when you're watching it, you're having a lot of fun. But by the end, you're like, well, of course nobody died and there wasn't any real damage. And I know all of these relationships have to be repaired because they have to do with Thanos.
Another movie has to come out.
Because another movie has to come out. And this is where...
And the movie really does soften the blow by ending kind of with just a letter that's like, hey, I know we have our differences, but someday we know something bigger than those differences is coming, and we're going to have to leave the door open to come back together.
Key thing I think that will bind all the films together, because we really do want to think of Winter Soldier, Civil War, and the Infinity Wars as, you know, one giant story arc. The thing that will bind it together, I think, is just a commitment to psychological realism. Ultimately, you know, if we can find a way to execute some of those cosmic characters with, you know, an element that you can identify with on a psychological level, and that's going to be the most important thing now.
That is Joe Russo of Anthony and Joe Russo, the directors, talking about sort of knowing the challenge of throwing together this movie and realizing that moving from Winter Soldier, which is it's a spy thriller that actually is very grounded in reality in a lot of ways for being a superhero movie. Like, that's the asterisk you're going to always have to put on there.
Sure.
but very, very grounded. I would say probably, if not my favorite Marvel movie, like definitely among like my top 2 or 3.
Right. Because it's very important in laying the groundwork for this movie. But that movie, I think, works really well as a self-contained
It absolutely does.
thing. And whereas this movie, again, like I think it's a good movie. I really enjoyed watching it.
It's super fun. It's a blast.
Super fun. It's a blast. I think
Characters are great.
we've talked a little bit about it.
Script
It has
is
some
great.
good ideas, great script. But it was kind of the beginning of the end of Marvel movies for me, in that it made very clear what Joe Russo just said there, which is that this is the first piece of a bigger thing. And, you know, one of the reasons I veered away from Marvel movies for a long time is this idea that if I missed one, if I didn't watch every single Marvel movie, if I didn't catch every Disney Plus series, I was going to be lost. And so this is the one where everything kind of becomes very intertwined. And while I enjoy it here, it is a line in the sand. It's this dividing line between sort of the stuff that came before it and the stuff that's going to come after it.
Well, let me ask you this though. Do you think that they achieved the psychological realism in this movie that they were going for? Because like some context, they really talked about how going from Winter Soldier into this film, they knew that they were going to have way more fantastical elements and it was going to feel less grounded. You know, you mentioned that the first Avengers movie just felt kind of like light and airy and there were no consequences.
Yeah, the movie had no weight to it at all.
And they were afraid of kind of falling into that same trap. And so they went for this supposed psychological realism in which the characters had genuine, real feelings and emotions and arcs that we were going to believe and buy into.
Mm-hmm.
Does it achieve it?
In a word, yes. I think that, to your point, like you can only get so grounded and real in the context of superheroes. But I do think setting up this idea of the motivations being Captain America's motivation is very much heightened by his relationship to Bucky. And later on, Tony's motivations are very attached to his psychology. Tony's
is very much.
He
bounces around in this movie between a lot of pain over the ending of his and Pepper's relationship to an enormous amount of guilt that he feels when he meets that woman whose son died in Sokovia when they were, I think his quote is, kicking ass, which I think is, I mean, again, a huge indictment of Ultron where it doesn't deal with these things. And then he's like, I'm going to deal with this thing because a real human being died who was the son of someone. And I think it kicks this movie off by grounding it.
I mean, the movie starts with Wanda throwing a villain who's about to blow himself up, kind of to save one of her comrades, and throws him into a building that explodes and kills a bunch of innocent civilians. And then it, for the first time in an Avengers movie, I know this is a Captain America movie, like it comes to a screeching halt to address that just happened.
And it's actually why I love this movie, because the opening sequence feels like the spy thriller. So it opens on a spy thriller. They're doing some spying. They're looking over their shoulders. They've traveled internationally. You're like, oh, we're in another fun spy thriller. And then it suddenly becomes the terrorist hasn't succeeded in the way he intended, but terrorism still happened. And Wanda has that horrible trolley decision, right? So you say to save a colleague of hers, right? But also everyone in the marketplace. Do you save, and this question, oh God, do you save everyone at the ground floor or up in the penthouse? And she kills everyone up in the penthouse, which I actually believe is what sparks this, is because she kills people who have more money. If she'd let them blow up on the ground in the marketplace where the poor were, I don't think it would have been as big of a deal.
That's fascinating. I hadn't thought of that.
And that's actually because think about all the deaths that have led up to this moment. Mostly like poorer civilians have paid the prices, not in the original Avengers movie, because that one is just out of this world insane. It doesn't matter. They did completely rip New York apart. I mean, in all fairness, they're dealing with an alien threat. So it's something they've never seen before. But in this instance, we've dealt with terrorism before. There have been people putting bombs in their pockets since the 1900s when anarchists were walking around doing this. That's what they're dealing with in this moment. It's something that's very real. It's something that exists in our real world, not just the Marvel world.
Yeah, I mean, we immediately recognize the suicide bomber as a threat.
And she chooses to elevate the suicide bomber out of the marketplace up towards those on that higher floor. And now there's an international incident.
Yeah. You know, and it's, if I had to choose, right? I actually think she does the right thing in that moment.
And I do too. And I do too.
Because, yeah, you have the trolley problem, and yeah, you have to decide kind of someone's going to die.
There's no way that in this circumstance that someone isn't going to die.
I mean, by pure body count, I think she probably makes the right choice.
I think she does too, but I think this actually comes back to whether having oversight is better or not. So I don't know how old Wanda's supposed to be in this, but I know that she's supposed to be younger than the actress. Like, I think she's supposed to be like in her 20s, early 20s.
Yeah, that's how I read it too.
Is she capable of carrying the psychological burden of making a trolley choice that real? And I think the movie's answer is no.
No, I mean, it breaks her.
It absolutely breaks her. And that psychological realism, this is where this movie continues to work for me. It's like you see it break her.
Yeah.
You understand her age. You understand the decision she made. And I'm in her place. And like,
I think doing it to Wanda was a really great choice because Wanda is objectively the most powerful Avenger. Her superpower is the superpower to kind of end all superpowers, right? I mean, when you have a Wanda, you kind of don't need anything else except that Wanda is also a person. And when she uses that power...
In some ways, she's the most human of all of them. I would say more so than Black Widow or Hawkeye.
Yeah, and they're the ones without superpowers.
Exactly.
And so that juxtaposition, I think, was a very smart choice, to have Wanda be the one who should be your sort of deus ex machina, the one that you can kind of bring in and solve all of your problems, because she has this superpower that can't be stopped, that really has very few limits, that can do anything and solve anything, but she causes the problem that rips the Avengers apart. And so, yeah, I think it does get that psychological realism right.
I agree. I actually think the writing on this film is super well done. So in all that I read, Anthony and Joe Russo, they spent a year working on the script. They said, I'm not a big Marvel guy. You're the one who comes after Marvel on this pod regularly. I've kept my lips relatively sealed, but I'm a relatively anti-Marvel guy. Like, I think I asked you if you thought it was cinema, and you said no, and I didn't answer the question because...
Actually, I think I said yes.
No, sorry. You said, I asked you if you agreed with Martin Scorsese, and you said no. I am very on the fence about this because I do struggle to see these movies as cinema, and I honestly... I don't want to say boycott's too strong of a word, but I just refuse to see them for the longest time unless my son absolutely demanded. Like, we saw Ant-Man in IMAX because the kid saw a preview of it at Disneyland and was like, I want to see that movie. And I'm not going to like deny him and say, no, you can't see it. So we did, but I didn't see, gosh, I maybe had seen 2 or 3 of them until about 2021, 2022, like after Endgame. Endgame had come out, all of the things that happened. And because I think it had always sort of missed this psychological realism for me, they never really felt like they had stories that had any weight. And this is one of the first ones I saw where I said, oh, like this film is trying to do something a little bit better, a little bit smarter. It's doing just, I think it actually does justice to the Civil War comic, despite some of the real world things that are missing to inspire it. I actually think it does a really good job of capturing the spirit of what it's about. Like, let's talk about Rhodey though. Like Rhodey, so like they take the veteran, and of course he gives up his legs for the battle, which is like, I mean, that's just like, again, choosing the right character to go through what they do. This is just smart writing. Like, the Russo brothers know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're juggling so many characters, so many storylines. And the Russo brothers, like you said, they know these characters in and out and use them properly.
Yeah, like when you expose the military veteran to that kind of damage during a battle that was so meaningless, like that resonates. But, and this is where the Marvel Universe always just kind of like has that asterisk, is he's best friends with a billionaire who is an engineering genius. And by the end of the movie, what's he doing? He's
walking with an exoskeleton.
He's walking with an exoskeleton. And it's like, it's not that you don't feel the pain of what he went through, because you do. In fact, I think that scene is
and actually the scene where he's learning how to use the exoskeleton, I think is really well done. And
well, I was going to say the scene when he crashes to the ground is one of the most beautifully shot scenes in the entire film. Like that of Falcon and Iron Man coming down from both sides of the screen as you see him plummeting to the ground is, I think it's a great metaphor for the entire film. You have two sides rushing to save something that is going to crash regardless. And if they caught it, it would still get damaged. It doesn't matter. Like this Avengers team is going down, and there's nothing that either of them are going to be able to do about it. And I love all of it, but then they just pull the stakes out because nothing's sticky, because everything has to go into the next movie.
And that's, I think, where Scorsese comes in and says this isn't cinema, kind of because it can't be in some ways, right? Like if you're spending $500 billion, like you have to know that like you're going to get a return on that.
Meanwhile, he spends $300 million on Killers of the Flower Moon and gets no return on it.
But I think
makes us all sit for 3.5 hours and watch Leo pretend to be 22 years old.
But that's
while he's
the
50.
world that he would rather live in, right? Like where the art is the thing, right? Is that you don't want the commercial stakes to overtake the artistic stakes.
Yeah. So speaking of that, though, so I think they actually miss on one of the commercial stakes. So we had the new Captain America. We haven't had a Captain America movie since this one in 2016. So it's been 9 years since we've had a Captain America proper in the title of a film. Anthony Mackie is introduced as our new Captain America, his Falcon character. And I actually want to talk about how this movie sets him up to be a Captain America.
If he sees us coming, that won't be a problem. He kind of hates us.
Don't thank me. His name is Red Wings. Cute. Go ahead, bet him.
The people that shoot at you usually wind up shooting at me.
It was a great audition, but it'll never happen again.
This stuff coming out of you? I don't know if you've been in a fight before, but there's usually not this much talk. I hate you. You're the good cop now? Well, you better go get a bad cop. Because you're going to have to go Mark Furman on my ass to get information out of me.
I don't know how far ahead they're planning when they're making Civil War, but I put together the supercut very specifically because I noticed that Falcon never says anything of consequence. He's there for a quip. He's there to make a point. So some of those lines are actually from that opening where we're like, oh, this is a fun spy thriller. Yeah. We're having these action sequences. He's being very irreverent about actually killing people in the opening sequence, which I love, but they're using him to be irreverent about it. Making the handoff of the shield, the Captain America shield, it's so important. Making the handoff of that is a really difficult thing to do to a new character. And I think Anthony Mackie's great. This is not a criticism of him, but it is a criticism of maybe the broader plan, maybe some of the writing, but they give him nothing other than bubble gum to say in this movie. And he's used as a bit of a foil for the overall theme. And so you don't walk away thinking that's my next Captain America.
They do a good job of making him likable for the audience. I think and Anthony Mackie has like a natural charisma and charm on screen, right? And so,
of course he does. He's great.
And so those clips I think are really illustrative of, you put him on there, you give him something kind of, winky to say.
Yeah.
And as an audience member, you're like, okay, I like this guy. I want to spend some time with this guy. But the mantle, to your point, the weight of that shield is something that we're led to believe is important. And I don't know that they've given him the strength to carry that.
Yeah. I know in some of the comic series, or at least I don't know, but my understanding is that mantle is handed off to Falcon there. I just don't know that the Marvel Cinematic Universe did the work to hand it off. And I think that's why you wound up with it's a lackluster film in my understanding. I haven't seen it, so I don't want to say, but it didn't do well. What makes Captain America a compelling character? And I mean, yes, it's partially Chris Evans' performance, but what makes him a compelling character that's survived all of these years in the Marvel Universe and comics is that he is a person of great duty and great honor, that he is sort of this immovable rock. Like you will not change his mind. He's almost moral to a fault in that he will follow what he thinks is right and sometimes miss some of those important details that we were talking about that occur in this movie, which is, again, why this movie is so well written. It's a great example of how you can manipulate a Captain America-like character is by, Helmut Zemo figures him out relatively easily because he's not a complex guy, and he is somebody who's deeply serious. He is sort of part of that silent generation, and occasionally you get a little wink and a little line from him, and those little payoffs feel really good. It's our relationship with Captain America is almost like an abusive relationship where you get so little from him on a regular basis that when you get something, it feels really good because he is he's someone who you want him to like you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I also think too that, and this goes to the point where I think, the Chris Evans versus Anthony Mackie versions of Captain America, I think have that sort of problem that they compete is Captain America is a symbol more than he's a person. He's an idea.
Yeah.
And I think the Chris Evans version very much is that idea, or up until this point, you see him as this idea, this, like you said, he's a stand-in for morality. And yes, when he gets humanized, we respond to it. But I think when you switch over and you have Falcon take over, he almost becomes too much of a human.
Yep.
And
that's what I'm saying. He's like, from those cuts, like, he's silly. You don't hear his morality in there. In fact, you hear him sort of complaining about Captain America's actions because they put him at risk. Captain America would never be worried about someone else's actions.
No, up until this point, Captain America has chosen twice to die on behalf of the greater good.
He would never make a quip like that.
Yeah. Right. And that's why, like, Captain America can't be Tony Stark.
No, it would never work. Yeah.
And that's kind of what they're trying to do there.
So just from like a technical aspect, I think the writing, though, despite this hiccup, is very good. Let's do Zemo, because I think Zemo is another character that is more complicated than maybe meets the eye because he gets a little screen time.
You're Sokovian. Is that what this is about?
Sokovia was a failed state long before you blew it to hell. No. I'm here because I made a promise.
You lost someone.
I lost everyone. And so will you. An empire toppled by its enemies can rise again. But one which crumbles from within, that's dead. Forever.
I love me a good villain. I really do. You know this about me. What are your thoughts on Helmut Zemo?
So it's funny because I'm glad we're spending some time with Helmut Zemo, because earlier I kind of said that he isn't the biggest villain of the movie. And I stand by that. I think he is here because you need him there to move some things forward. And that's fine, right? Like he's very much a practical inclusion because you need to have him there so that the story works. And he is used very well for that purpose. For the Civil War to matter, it does have to be this self-inflicted disintegration from within. I think like what he says is exactly right, that the stakes of the movie are that they are not being blown up by something external, they're imploding. And the fact that he has the read on that and is able to make it happen when the characters don't, right? Like they're kind of, up until this point, a little bit clueless to how much they're being played. It makes him really compelling.
I mean, they're not a little bit clueless. They're extraordinarily clueless.
They're pretty much completely clueless to actually what's happening around them.
And they've put all of their cards on the table. They've given him everything he needed to deconstruct them. So, you know, we mentioned that Captain America is one of the easiest characters in the world to read. Like, set up some kind of villainy that might be happening. He will show up and he will do the same thing.
Yeah, because he is good and that is bad.
Yep.
And so he has to beat the bad with the good.
Yep.
And we all recognize that. We all feel good about it.
The comic actually does this to great effect because they set a trap for Captain and his like hidden Avengers to come out. They just start a fire in a building that has a bunch of people in it, and the people are obviously evacuated in advance, and he shows up because it's so easy to get him to show up. It's no difficulty. And what I love in this movie, though, is that you also have this sequence with Tony Stark at MIT where he just exposes his big old weakness to the entire world as well. You want to know what's going to get under Tony Stark's skin? Well, I'll tell you.
Because this is the last time we're all going to be together. You know what's about to happen. Say something. If you don't, you'll regret it.
I love you, Dan. And I know you did the best you could.
That's how I wish it happened. Binarily augmented retroframing, or BARF. God, I gotta work on that acronym. An extremely costly method of hijacking the hippocampus to clear traumatic memories. It doesn't change the fact that they never made it to the airport or all the things I did to avoid processing my grief. But... Plus $611 million for my little therapeutic experiment.
Yeah, $611 million, not well spent. The minute he sees that video of his parents being killed, he just goes berserk. So maybe he should consider investing his money in more useful things. But the reason I play that clip is because this movie and Zemo as a villain interact to show how if you're just watching, if you're just paying attention to the details and the facts about those in power, you can, with a couple of bullets, some water, a bit of research, deconstruct the world. Yeah. And that's a really scary world when you think about it, because those in power are so careless with how they expose their weaknesses.
It's like, oh, I need to get inside this guy's head. He's like, well, here you go.
Yeah, I'll get on YouTube because somebody recorded that for MIT.
And I think it's really cool because, you know, our debate earlier about the Sokovia Accords and who's right, one of my big problems is that they are tackling something that is bigger, right? It's bigger than humanity, than people, but then they're regulating people, right? And this kind of is happening in reverse, right? It's where if you want to take on the establishment or the world order or whatever, all you have to do is pick off a few individuals. And Zemo gets that before the heroes do.
Yeah, Zemo seems to be the only one who gets it. And I wish Zemo got more screen time, but with 12 heroes in 2.5 hours, Daniel Bruhl's not going to get a lot of screen time in that circumstance, but I will tell you.
Really good, too.
He is so good in this
He's good in everything I've seen him in.
He really is. He's one of those actors where I wish he showed up more often, and every time he sort of randomly does, I'm very excited to see him. But Zemo, as far as villains go across the Marvel Cinematic Universe, probably my favorite.
Yeah, and he's the one I think most people forget about.
I think he's the one most people forget about. And he's not the Joker. He's not trying to create chaos. Like, this is a mission of vengeance. He really is like, oh, you're careless with your power. Let me show you how incredibly vulnerable your power is. Like, you think you can run around the world and do whatever you want. And honestly, any one of us could do this to you. It just takes a little bit of know-how and a lot of perseverance. It's why I think he's such a well-written villain. These are my favorite types of villains. When I think about the James Bond universe, Skyfall, you know, Javier Bardem's playing this type of villain. And then, of course, the Joker's playing this type of villain. These villains, I think, are the hardest to write, though, because they don't represent a threat of force. They represent a psychological threat to the weaknesses of the characters. And we've been watching these weaknesses play out over this entire time, that when you see somebody get underneath them, there's something really deeply scary and satisfying about watching a villain do it. You almost root for the villain.
Yeah, well, it's really...
I like rooting for villains.
You do that a lot. You're the one who said you sympathize with the Nazis in Green Room.
I did say that. I should not have put that on the internet.
But what you are saying makes him great, and it's kind of what the movie does well, is it takes something really, really big and makes it matter by making it small. You know, you have the Avengers who are tackling these existential threats, right? It's, you know, threat from space that's literally going to end the Earth. In Age of Ultron, right? They you know, put a city in the sky and then they're going to drop it like it's a meteor that takes out the dinosaurs. But the thing that really threatens the Avengers is when you make them small, when you make them people with the same problems that you and I have. And Zemo, you know, again, I said, like, he's not really a supervillain. Well, the reason he's not a supervillain is because he's kind of just a guy.
I mean, he's not a supervillain the way Black Widow's not a superhero, but she has a very strong understanding of how to fight and how to manipulate people. And you see just how powerful those tools can be. I like comparing his intellect and understanding what's going on in the world against presumably the smartest intellect. Well, maybe this isn't fair to say, but like the best at processing information on the good guy's side.
I have an equation.
Oh, this will clear it up.
In the 8 years since Mr. Stark announced himself as Iron Man, the number of known enhanced persons has grown exponentially. And during the same period, the number of potentially world-ending events has risen at a commensurate rate.
He's saying it's our fault?
I'm saying there may be a causality. Our very strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict. And conflict breeds catastrophe. Oversight. Oversight is not an idea that can be dismissed out of hand.
Boom.
This is the stupidest thing said in this entire movie. Everything that he says is wrong. He says that conflict breeds catastrophe. No, your type of conflict breeds catastrophe. Yeah. Conflict does not breed catastrophe, but because you all choose to fight with weapons and powers in civilized areas, you create catastrophes doing it.
I like the choice of the word oversight because oversight is a word that has two meanings, and they basically are saying that one of those meanings is the problem and it needs to be solved by the other meaning.
I didn't think about that. That's actually really interesting. But how does having oversight, based on his original premise, which is enhanced beings being out there inviting challenge, how does having oversight reduce that threat?
It doesn't.
And then he says there's a causality, but that's not causality.
That's correlation.
That is 100% correlation. So everything that Vision is saying...
As much as I liked the word oversight, I had a big problem with the word causality.
As did I. Like that word jumps out. And this is, again, to my mind, just really smart writing in this movie, is that you take something that sounds really smart. This will bring us back to Love and Death. Someone's saying something that sounds really, really smart, and you're like, oh, he gets it. It's coming from a smart person. He's saying something with all of these important words. He said equation. He said causality. I'm going to buy everything he just said. But when you start to deconstruct what he said, it's nonsense. And the only person that understands the problem is Zemo. And Zemo understands it so well that he's able to exploit it and do what he does. And so this is why, like, again, Daniel Bruhl, great in this role. Zemo as a villain, really great. The sequence at the end between him and Chadwick Boseman is maybe one of the best acted sequences in the entire film, where he goes to kill himself and he stops him. Mm-hmm. I love that part of the movie. Yeah, so it definitely is probably one of the biggest parts of the movie that works for me. Let's get into the actual broader technical aspect of the filmmaking of this movie,
yes.
Because this is we're talking about on these like small thematic levels, but this is a really, really, really big movie with a ton of characters, a lot of CG, an insane amount of stunts. There are at least 4 major large action sequences that take place during the course of this film, but obviously the most important and the one that was most advertised is the one at the airport.
Yes.
And so I just want to dive into that scene and talk like a little bit about some of the things I learned about it that I thought were really interesting. And I know this is one of your favorite scenes in the movie.
I love this scene as a big action scene, mm-hmm. where it just gives you all the stuff. It really works well. Like, I don't know that you can find, take the movie out of it, right? Like, take everything out of it and just give me an action sequence with all the big action sequency stuff. I don't know that you find a better example than that scene.
The Russo brothers said that shooting that sequence at the airport was like shooting a movie within a movie.
Yeah.
They said it took them the amount of time to make that sequence. The amount of time to make that sequence that it took them to make basically the rest of the film. They did several months of preparation. It was shot on 2 different locations, one in Atlanta on a giant cement slab with a huge green screen that's like the size of a football field. And then they also did some shooting in Leipzig, Germany as well in order to put together that scene. The preparation was nuts.
There's some good practical things that they do, but then so much of it has to be layered in later. And if you don't get the timing and the choreography perfectly, you can't do that.
No. And they have to break it down into these individual components. And I think that's what makes the scene work really well, too, is when you have that many people fighting. I mean, when you have a movie called Civil War, you have to have a scene that has a war. Mm-hmm. And this is your actual war that occurs. Yeah. And so how do you break down a war into individual fights? And one of the ways they were able to do it is this is the first film to use the Arri Alexa 65B IMAX camera, which was a really big deal. This camera's release, its sensor is 3 times larger than a standard 35 millimeter. But what it really meant for shooting this film was, you know, I don't want to get too technical into camera stuff because I've really nerded out on camera stuff in these last several months. But this can actually capture more action because the camera has a wider field of view. So when you have 12 superheroes fighting, you can fit more onto the screen with greater detail. And that was really important for having this camera in order to make the scene come to life.
Well, and this camera changed the game. They actually shot the movie. They didn't make the movie on a computer later. They shot this scene.
As much as they could,
as much as it was possible to do, far more than previously.
Absolutely. And it allowed for a lot of films in the future to do this too. So
And you feel that. You feel there's a realism to it that just didn't exist prior.
I mean, it creates a pretty spectacular sequence, I think, that is also unforgettable. Admittedly, not my favorite action sequence in the movie. And I do think that there is something a little bit weird about this part, even though it's wonderful. It's a movie that's questioning the use of violence, and it makes a huge spectacle of a spectacularly violent scene. Very spectacular.
It does.
And it's like a lot of films that criticize violence with action fall into this trap.
Yeah, I think putting it on an airport runway helps with that.
I think putting it on an airport runway helps, but also it is one of the moments in the movie where the writing stops working for me. It's a little bit of a cheat. Tony evacuated the airport. Let's go out here and have a fight. It feels like a football game. It's like
it does.
They set up the lights, they set up the action, they got everybody off the field. Now it's time to play.
We get to go.
And now we get to go and
have our fight, and it's not going to have all of the collateral damage that got us here in the first place because of the way we set it up. The other action sequence that happens later you like more is because of where it happens and where the stakes then land.
In the nuclear silo.
Yeah.
I think that sequence, I mean, that one's my second favorite. The Bucky chase remains my favorite because just technically it is so much fun to watch.
It's just so
really
cool.
It's really creative. It's also where the Russo brothers really shine. They're great at these hand-to-hand battle sequences. Like, I would love to see them direct like a Bourne movie. I think they would be amazing at something like that.
Gosh, imagine if they got picked for the new Bond.
But for a big, little bit weightless, low stakes action sequence on the airport, it's a lot of fun. It's really well directed. I like it. But like I said, I just think it undermines some of the themes of the film in a way that felt, you mentioned them being product-y, feels a little product-y to me.
Yeah, and it's the one that was used the most to sell the product.
It was the only one I remember seeing in those scenes, and it was fun. So that's a great shift. We love talking about the marketing because I'm going to take us right into our 4 Ps of product, promotion, pricing, and placement. Obviously, the marketing of a film like this, where the budget was, what, $350, I think?
I think like straight production is $250. They usually spend roughly the production budget than marketing the movie.
But we know that it cost a ton. It came in, this is number 86 of the highest grossing, right?
86 when you adjust it for inflation in just real dollar bills, it's much, much higher.
I want to start with the product.
Yeah.
So the film Captain America Civil War as a product is a really interesting product because it's introducing 2 new characters. It's bringing Black Panther, and I don't want to downplay Chadwick Boseman in any way. I think he's freaking phenomenal. I think he's great in this movie, but it teased Spider-Man coming to the Marvel Universe, which I think a lot of people really, really wanted to see. And I think for people who were not involved in understanding why he hadn't been in the movies up to this point, were a little confused why he wasn't there.
Right.
And so we got to see Spider-Man.
I like this history. This is the kind of stuff that I get nerdy about. Right. Spider-Man is my favorite comic book character, my favorite superhero. I love Spider-Man. Like, he's the most like John Hughesy superhero. And I'm a sucker for those kinds of movies and stories and characters.
Okay.
But yeah, you had this thing where Spider-Man movies were big, successful, critically acclaimed superhero movies before Marvel Studios existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that then created a problem for Disney. For Marvel and then later Disney, in that they couldn't use him.
Yeah, they couldn't use him because he had been leased out on this very, very weird contract to Sony that is ad infinitum. They can keep him.
I'm going to get the exact details wrong, but I think the broad strokes are before Marvel was producing their own movies, they had all of this very valuable IP that could be made into movies. And for them, at the time, it made sense. Like, hey, we can just cash this check from Sony, but
actually, they were in really deep financial problem when they did that. Like, it was sort of a force. They knew that Spider-Man was valuable, and they were like, how do we prevent ourselves from going...
We need to extract value out of this asset.
Or we're going down.
Yeah. And so they did this lease, and the lease is, like you said, it's indefinite. I believe the only stipulation is basically that Sony had to make a Spider-Man movie often enough to keep it.
They have to release, I don't remember the exact details of it, but I believe they have to release a Spider-Man related content. I think it's at least once every 2 years.
And that's why we get like sequels to Venom and we get Madam Web and all of these things. Not because...
Madame Web.
Madame. And it's not necessarily because anyone cares about those things, but it's because it keeps it in Sony's pocket.
Yep. That is exactly right. And so seeing him show up, it really meant a lot, I think, to superhero fans. I think to non-superhero fans who maybe just really liked the original Spider-Man movies and wanted to see Spider-Man in this world. I think it's really unique, though, that going back to this film and thinking about this in terms of a product, that this is a world in which a masked character rendered on a computer can have a bigger draw than any person actually working on the film. That's kind of unheard of if you think about it. Like, that was the draw. Like, we talked about Indiana Jones and we're like, okay, as a product, why does this work? We've got Sean Connery, we've got Harrison Ford. They're all coming together and do this thing. No, this is literally just a computer-drawn guy.
Yeah, no one gave a shit about Tom Holland at the time.
Nobody even knew who he was. Yeah. By calling it Captain America Civil War, but then giving us what seemed like was going to be an Avengers movie, everybody felt like they were getting a better deal in this product now, which was just freaking mind-blowingly smart when I want to talk to these people.
This absolutely could have been released as Avengers Civil War. This could have been the third Avengers.
Yep. And I think if it had, it probably still would have done well. But calling it Captain America Civil War was just smart marketing. So that's sort of the product that we're dealing with here. So when we talk about the promotion, that's sort of the next P in the market.
Yeah.
So one of the big things, and I mentioned this earlier, revealing Spider-Man holding Captain's shield in that preview, it broke everybody's brains.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just that we were getting Spider-Man, it's that we were getting Spider-Man holding this symbol that only one character holds ever, and we all had to know why. Like, that was a really, really big question that came out, and it made everybody get really invested.
Great shot. It's
perfect shot.
In the context of the movie, it is a perfect shot. And then I think that if this wasn't a product, if you were just putting out a piece of art, I would have loved if they kept it in their back pocket.
Yeah.
If that was the first time we saw it was in this movie, that would have just, I mean, my brain would have been on the back of the theater wall. But God, you can't have that gold and not use it for the marketing of the movie.
I think they used it the right way. Yeah, I think they used it the right way. It was to get people to come and see the film. Yes, it would have been amazing to see it for the first time in theaters. So the next thing that they did was they created a Choose Your Side event that happened on social media. You could be Team Iron Man or Team Cap. It sparked massive engagement and debate across the internet. Character social media accounts were out there sort of goading each side. And then you had Robert Downey Jr. go to the Eiffel Tower and have it light up with his Iron Man logo and do that online, which was just bonkers. And it gave you a sense of sort of the scale of the film and the scale of everything that was happening. So just amazing. And
it's a little bit of a fake. It works in promotion, right? Because the movie's not out there yet. We actually don't know how, in a lot of ways, deadly serious this movie is. So they were able to be really like jokey and fun and have the tone of the Avengers movies in the marketing.
Yeah.
You get there and you're given something a little bit different. But yeah, from a promotion standpoint, just really, really smart.
It's funny that we were pretending to be polarized about fake characters in 2016, and now it's so polarizing that people don't even go on X. I think a lot of people were having a lot of good fun, and I think during a time in which things were so polarized in reality, because again, it is 2016 in this moment, having a place to sort of play out those feelings in a way that is lower stakes also just feels really good generally, and that's why people would want to play along with that. So the film, in terms of placement, hit 4,226 theaters on opening day in the United States alone, which is nuts. There was an emphasis on IMAX and 3D screens to increase obviously
Just
the
per
revenue.
ticket price. Yeah. I mean, this thing went on and made what, 1.2 billion dollars.
Something like that. Yeah. And it was able to hang on to IMAX, I think, all of the screens for like 11 days before the next big IMAX film was coming out.
Yeah.
Can't remember what the next one that was coming. That was like on the horizon.
Never happens. Usually you get opening week.
Yeah.
As we're recording this, the F1 movie is out. It's already losing those big screens, right?
Yeah.
It's been less than a week and it's going to lose
a
its
Jurassic
big
World
screens.
movie that nobody seems to like.
Yeah.
And then ticket prices were pretty standard, about $9 to $12. So pretty much what we're used to right now. So they haven't changed a lot, but they have that really high perceived value that I mentioned as well. The other thing is, when you talk about place, it's important not just to talk about physical place, but place and time. So this movie came after Age of Ultron and Ant-Man leading into Spider-Man Homecoming. So it came off of two relatively big movies. Age of Ultron is actually higher on this list than Civil War. It made more money. And so a big movie, although people have a problem with it. And then Ant-Man was sort of a fun movie that we were seeing a new character being brought into the universe. And then for any cinephiles, people knew that Edgar Wright had his hand in Ant-Man, which was the only reason I went to see that movie.
Yeah.
Well, and also my son made me.
But also the post-credit sequence here is brilliant marketing, right? They bring Spider-Man back into the fold. They do it with an iconic image. You know that there's a Spider-Man, or you learn that there's a Spider-Man movie on the calendar. They do a post-credit sequence with Tom Holland with some new Stark-enabled technology. And then it just ends with, Spider-Man will return. Like, he is back. He is home.
Well, that is...
And then they released a movie called Spider-Man Homecoming.
So you're bringing up something. There's marketing for this movie, but this movie is marketing for other movies. And this is where that debate about is this cinema, how can you call it cinema when it is a piece of marketing as well? Yeah. Not just, so it's movie, it's product, it's marketing, and all three are happening constantly within this film that it does sort of it sort of breaks your brain when you think about how this movie functions. It's like, Back to the Future 1 led into Back to the Future 2, so it was marketing for 2, but it not in the way that these films function with each other. Right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a break and come back and talk about who we think was the best part of this broken cinematic universe.
Let's do it.
We'll be back with more Sold Out.
Welcome back to Sold Out. Just had a great conversation about Captain America Civil War, but now we're going to talk about our favorite element, our MVP.
I think something happened again that happened on Indiana Jones.
It did, and something happened sort of again that happened on Jaws. Not in the same way, but I have two MVPs.
That's not exactly the same. So who's your MVP today?
My MVP is the Russo brothers. It took 9 episodes for me to break down and go ahead and name the director of a movie as the MVP. But I really do think they took this Hulk-sized task of bringing so many elements together and making them work as a movie that how can they not be the MVP here? I think if I chose anyone else, I would be doing it just to avoid picking the director of the movie.
Well, I also chose the Russo brothers because I think they took this Hulkbuster-sized task and broke up the Marvel Universe in a really fun and interesting way. I landed on them actually very specifically because I was having so much difficulty. I'd taken a bunch of notes watching the movie, and I was like, originally I actually wanted to go with the stunt team because the stunts in this movie are phenomenal. There are a couple instances in which Captain America falls, and you know that the stunt team worked so hard to make that look and feel real, and there's minimal CG. It was funny. I was flowing down the sequences and going through frame by frame. My wife was in the room with me, and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying to figure out at what point they replaced Captain America with CG because this is just a great stunt. This is amazing, and this is so hard to do. But I realized that it didn't stand out above some of the acting, and it didn't stand on heads and shoulders above some of the production design. And I was like, man, everything in this film just really is extraordinarily well done. And when everything is well done, that means that there's a really good director at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, when the parts come together to create something big, right? When the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts, well, then it's who did that? Who brought all those things together to make this great thing? And yeah, it's the Russos.
I'll admit I'm actually biased towards the Russo brothers as well. Arrested Development is one of my like top 3 sitcoms of all time.
Yes, the original 3 seasons for sure.
They direct, well, yeah. I'm not, are there seasons after the 3? I don't think so. They directed some of the best episodes, including the pilot. So they established the visual style for the show that has one of the best visual styles, and that really kind of changed the game for like handheld cameras and how comedy could be shot.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get the Office without Arrested Development, right?
Exactly. And so I've just always kind of been a Russo brothers fan, and I'm a huge Arrested fan. And when I saw that they were in the Marvel Universe, I was like, okay, tell me more. Like, I want to know how they made that jump, and this jump from like comedy to something else. I just think that creatives with their background in comedy seem to bring something to the next genre that they work in that a lot of other creatives just can't quite land. And maybe it's because comedy is just so hard.
Well, I think too, this is very different than what we said when we were talking about jumping from comedy to horror.
Yeah, when we were discussing Jordan Peele. Yeah.
Right? Something that I think the Russo brothers do well is because they worked in comedy, they know how to work with something that's light and jokey. And so when you have to introduce that comic relief or get the most out of like a Paul Rudd, right? Like they're just well equipped to do that from that experience.
Well, and they also had a huge ensemble cast that they had to work with and have all of these pieces work together. And so there's a lot that they brought to it. So Russo brothers are MVP of Captain America Civil War, but I want to tip my hat to Chadwick Boseman. What an amazing performance that he gives in this movie.
He does. I think, if I'm not mistaken with my familiarity with the list of top movies, I think we'll get to talk more about Chadwick Boseman in this role. So
we will. And, I'll be honest, until I watched it this time, I don't think I noticed how good his performance was. When you start looking for that MVP, you start looking for the things that you feel like are really great. And God, he had so little time on screen and he stood out in every single shot.
It's a shame we didn't talk more about it, but he actually does kind of kick off the emotional journey here too. He raises the stakes for us in a way that's really important.
He does. All right. So how did this movie stack up, Michael? Did we get 2016 right? Was Captain America Civil War, was this the movie that should have won this weekend? We watched Keanu. We watched The Green Room. What do we think?
It's not my favorite of the 3. My favorite of the 3 is Green Room. Green Room's a movie I tell people they have to see.
I'll be honest, I think we got it right. I loved Green Room, and I loved Green Room as much as you did. I think we letterboxed it the exact same number of stars. Mm-hmm. We both gave it really positive reviews. But the one I'm going to recommend, or the one that I think got it right, I actually am going to say Captain America Civil War, because it did something unwieldy. Mm-hmm. It is a super fun movie with a lot of interesting things going under the surface. Technically, it is brilliantly done.
Yeah, and if you're comparing it against its contemporaries, right, it does rise above, right? Like it's in a class of its own within its class.
Yeah. I think this was a great movie. I know we've sort of agreed on the last 3 being like, yeah, that was a big one. We will get to some that I do not feel that way about. I have scanned the list.
There are movies in the top 100. There are movies in probably the top 25 that I actively dislike. It'll be interesting when we get to those.
Let's see where we're going next on that note.
Oh, this is the part that I get like really emotionally invested in.
I know, me too. I can't wait. Are you ready?
Yep.
I'm pushing the button.
97.
All right. 97.
Made the cut just barely.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
We're visiting Harry Potter.
We're going to Harry Potter.
I knew we were going to do this multiple times.
Yeah.
Chamber of Secrets. That'll be a fun one. That's one of the Chris Columbus ones. So
that is one of the Chris Columbus ones.
Like it's one of the few that are still kids movies.
These are 100% kids movies. This will be fun.
This will be cool. What year is that?
That is, we need to know what year we're traveling to. We're traveling to 2002.
Okay.
Going a little further back in time. I'm excited about that.
A little bit. I know. I can't wait to figure out what we're going to have to see when Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is inevitably sold out.
I can't wait either. I think these are actually re-showing right now in a local theater too. We might be able to catch this one on the big screen.
Well, I love doing that.
I know that Tower was re-showing them. I don't know what date that one is. All right. Well, this has been awesome hanging out in 2016 with you. I think we got to see some really, really good movies. Mm-hmm. This was a great year. We got to discover a movie that not only I didn't really know anything about, but I honestly love now and will recommend to friends, and I may have to watch again sometime soon. So what an awesome journey through 2016.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in 2016. We really hope you're ready to hop in the time machine with us again as we travel to 2002. to attempt to see Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. In the meantime, follow us online. We are on Instagram and Threads and TikTok and a bunch of other places at soldout_pod. We are on YouTube. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. See our full episodes there in stunning high definition. Ian, where can they find out what you're up to?
They can find out what I'm up to at Ian_upleft at all of the places except for the ones I'm not on. And then I also keep a blog on our website at upleftmedia.com where I share what's going on at Uplift Media. And I also have a blog where I share what's going on at Sold Out, including, if you want to watch along, the next movies that are coming up. And so definitely check out that blog.
Yeah, really visit upleftmedia.com. Like Ian said, you'll find out about this show. You also find out about the other things we have going on. We have a new show coming out that you can find out about on there that is not about movies. Very exciting stuff. And if you are interested in what I am up to, you can follow me at all of the social media places at Michael_upleft. Can't wait to see you next week.
Can't wait to see you next week. We'll see you again on Sold Out.
Sold Out is an Uplift Media production. Hosted, written, and produced by Ian Tarter and Michael Smith. Edited and sound engineered by Ian Tarter. With special thanks to Rosie Page.